All right, excellent. So welcome everyone to the Refugee Resettlement 101 webinar. I would like to take a moment just to kind of do an opening activity. I know some of us were able to take the refugee quiz. However, I know some of us were not. So I'd like to see if we could go ahead and do that as a group. Miat, are you able to kind of check and see and just let people admit people as they're coming in? Once I share my screen on the other side, I won't be able to see that. So I'm just going to go ahead and reshare my screen, and we'll take this quiz together here just as an opening for our session today. I think it's about 4 or 5 questions, and so we'll go ahead and start the quiz. You should be able to see my screen. Let me know if you cannot, but hopefully you can. Everyone is good with seeing the screen? Get a quick thumbs up, or some folks have their cameras on. Just give me a nod of the head. Excellent. There we go. Wonderful. All right. So these are worldwide stats. Oh, beautiful. How many individuals are currently forcibly displaced worldwide? Is it A, more than 100 million, B, 25 million, C, 75 million, D, 50 million? Whatever the first answer I see is what I'm going to choose. So answer is, yep. A staggering 103 million individuals have been forcibly displaced worldwide as a result of persecution, conflict, violence, or human rights violations. This is the highest level of displacement on record. Next question. Which countries do most forcibly displaced people come from? Is it A, Syria, B, Venezuela, C, Afghanistan, D, South Sudan, E, Ukraine, or F, all of the above? First answer I see, F, all of the above. You're right. 69% of those displaced across borders come from just 5 countries: Syria, Venezuela, Afghanistan, South Sudan, and Ukraine. Next question. True or false? The 1951 Geneva Convention is the main international instrument of refugee law. First answer I see, true. Good job. The convention clearly spells out who a refugee is and the kind of legal protection, other assistance, and social rights they should receive from countries who have signed the document. All right, next question. Which of these countries hosts the largest refugee population? A, the US, B, Canada, C, Germany, or D, Turkey? First answer I see, D, Turkey. You're right. Turkey continues to be the world's largest refugee hosting country, home of 3.8 million refugees, or 15% of all people displaced across borders. I think this might be our second to last question. By definition, a refugee is someone who has been displaced because of, is it A, persecution, B, conflict, C, violence, D, human rights violations, or E, all of the above? For instance, C, all of the above. You're right. The answer is all of the above. A refugee is someone who has been forced to flee their home country because of persecution, conflict, violence, or human rights violations. A refugee has a well-founded fear of persecution for reasons of race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular group. Let's see, so that was the last question. So thank you all for taking the quiz. Looks like we got 100% here as a group. So excellent, excellent, excellent. I'm going to go back now and let's see. Bring up our presenter slides. Give me 2 shakes here. And I have lost, let me do that again. Hang on just a quick second. All right, let me come back to you here and I'm going to reshare because that didn't work the way I wanted it to. All right. Excellent. You should be able to see the screen. Yay, here we go. All right, so welcome again, everyone, to our webinar of Refugee Resettlement 101. A little bit of housekeeping for how we'll run this session. If you do have questions, please feel free to utilize the chat. As your question arises, just plug it in chat. We will take all questions at the end. So we'll just kind of run it that way, just so you don't forget your question. Feel free to drop it in chat and we'll address them once we get to the end of the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we can also take additional questions, but we will try to kind of save questions for the end. So feel free to drop them in chat, and once we get to the end of the session, we'll take those questions. Any other things that I might be forgetting, Miat? I think that was the only thing that we discussed, correct? Miat might have some kind of fun facts and he might want to interact with the group as well. So feel free to interact with Miat as he kind of requests that interaction. So we want to make this as fun as possible. So it is my honor to introduce my friend and colleague, Mr. Miat Lin. He is the director of the Maryland Office for Refugees and Asylees, and he's going to be our presenter today talking about refugee resettlement for us. So Miat, take it away.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Joanna. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. It was a great quiz, and I don't think I will even need to go further with my presentation because you all got 100% correct answers. That was great quiz, and thank you, Joanna, for including that. So as Joanna mentioned, my name is Miat Lin, Director at the Maryland Office for Refugees and Asylees. And that position also comes with another fancy title, I would say, that is the Maryland State Refugee Coordinator. So as you can imagine, there are 49 states and 1 city that maintain and advance refugee resettlement programs. So I'm one of those 50 state refugee coordinators across the country. So, you know, before I start my presentation, I also wanted to let you know from the very beginning that 17 years ago in May, I was resettled as a refugee in Orlando, Florida. So the happiest place on earth that I was sent to, but I was there for only about 6 months. And then I came up to Washington suburban area to work at the International Rescue Committee, the local resettlement office. And then I moved on to 2 different national resettlement agencies in the area. And then I was made the state refugee coordinator 4.5 years ago. So I've been with the agency for about 4.5 years. And during the very, very short period of 4.5 years, I have seen unprecedented events happen within our state as well as in our nation. So I'll be sharing those unprecedented events as well as some of the successes, as well as challenges that we face, providing humanitarian support to newly resettled refugees, asylees in our communities. I am a proud Marylander now, and the reason being, I have witnessed myself the great welcome that our community's members have shown over the past 16 years that I've been in the state, and I just wanted to highlight that on the screen you can see a picture of a locust point here in Baltimore. Many of those who are in Baltimore are already familiar with it. But I wanted to point out the fact that Locust Point was the 3rd largest entry point for immigrants after Ellis Island and the Port of Philadelphia. So we can be really proud of our welcoming tradition and continue to welcome new populations that are becoming the very integral part of our community and lives. So let's just go to the next slide, and I'm going to provide you with some of the global trend and some of the resettlement process, both overseas as well as here domestically, and the available federal and state refugee assistance, and how do we manage the resettlement infrastructure here in Maryland. And I'll be sure to leave plenty of time and space for Q&A, because I believe that you will have so many different questions, and then I'll be happy to have more informal conversation through Q&A. So if you do have questions during the presentation, as Joanna mentioned, please put it in the chat so that we can get to that questions later on. Okay, let's ready to get started. So the next slide, you already had the most updated and the correct information, but the number that you're seeing on the screen is at the end of 2021. So there were a total of 89.3 forcibly displaced individuals across the world. And then when we talk about, displaced people, so there are different categories, and you can see on the screen, refugees who are outside of their home country and unable or unwilling to return to their homeland due to the persecution, just like one of the quizzes mentioned. And 53.2 million people are internally displaced, meaning they are not outside of the borders, but they are displaced because of war, because of violence, and lastly, because of the climate change as well, right? So one of the examples that I can give you, you probably heard about South Sudan, going through the Civil War, as well as my home country, Burma or Myanmar, that's after the military coup. Millions of people were displaced internally. And 4.6 million people are deemed as asylum seekers. And you might be familiar with all of the scenes at the southern borders who might have a persecution claim, and some of them are seeking for asylum status. And Venezuela, 4.4 million are displaced abroad, and they are under the care of the UNHCR as well. So that was at the end of 2021, and the figure that we just saw through the quiz is 103 million people. How did it happen within a year? How did it happen? An increase of more than 10 million people were displaced within a period of 1 year. And we all know that that's because of the war in Ukraine and continuing oppression and restrictions by the Taliban on the Afghan nationalities. So currently, at the end of 2022, there are a total of 103 million people who are displaced, right? So it's amazing, right? I mean, you have more than 1 million people just because of a war, just because of the the authoritarian government oppressing their own citizens. But my fun fact would be that if you put all 103 million people into one country, in terms of population, where would it rank? You can put it in the chat. So the largest country by population, obviously, is China and India, with more than 1.4 billion people living in those two countries each. But if you put all 103 million people into a country, where were it ranked in terms of the size by population? So I'll get to the answer in a little while. But if you also look at some of the interesting demographic, is that both male and female are equally divided. The split, and also if you look at the age group, the ages between 18 and 59, that's the most productive years of everybody's life, right? I mean, I remember when I was 19 years old, I was still in college, and I was looking forward to advancing my career, my education, and such. And so almost everybody within the age group can, effectively say this is the most productive time. But of those unfortunate refugees are fleeing the violence, are fleeing the war, or temporarily housed within the refugee camps. And much more interesting fact is that the more percentage of the children are displaced compared to those who are safe. So the third line in the graph is the ages between 0 to 17, more than the normal portion of the regular populations are displaced. And if you think about it, these are our future, and they don't have any proper education. They don't have any medical health support and such, but they are replaced, right? So I'll get back to the fun fact about where the country with 103 million people would rank in terms of the population size. It would be the 15th largest country in the world, the 15th largest country in the world. So, if you compare with United States, there's 385 million people, about 1 in 3, individuals are displaced. So it's amazing. And, they just tracked those numbers since the end of the World War II and after the Geneva Convention. And, as the quiz said, it's the largest displacement in our history. So if we go to the next slide, you will see more facts, more graphs. So the quiz also mentioned that the top 5 countries that are hosting currently refugee population within their own borders. And if you look at the countries, Turkey, Colombia, Uganda, Pakistan, they are not rich countries, right? They have their own issues, they have their own problems. But with the assistance and support from the UNHCR, they are hosting those unfortunate refugees who couldn't be in their own country. And the situation in Germany is a little bit different because, as you probably know, just before the pandemic, there was a huge irregular migration across Africa into Europe. And Germany stepped up and took on many of, especially Syrian refugee populations, and giving them some pathway to permanency in their home country. So obviously those countries are not in a position to support a longer term assistance to the refugees within their own borders, right? And again, the 69% of all refugees originated from just 5 countries: Syria, Venezuela, Afghanistan, South Sudan, and Myanmar or Burma. But again, this figure did not include 2022 numbers. So obviously Ukraine numbers were not included. And I believe Ukraine is now the 3rd largest displaced persons in the world right now. So yeah, we have those individuals who are not able to go home or who are in need of assistance. But what are the solutions? Right? According to the UNHCR, there are 3 durable solutions that are on the table for every displaced person. And the most preferred one, obviously, is the voluntary repatriation to their own home country. But the situation has to be in a way that they can go back home in a dignified manner, right? I mean, they cannot be forced back because they had initially fled, right? Because of the oppressions and persecution. And second, solution is local integration. So refugees who are outside of their own country and ask for asylum status where they are currently at. But if you look back at the host countries, again, they are not rich countries and they are not in a position to offer those local integration. And the third durable solution, and the most difficult of all, is the third country resettlement. Less than 0.1% of those refugees are even considered for the third country resettlement. And as a humanitarian program, some countries have stepped up and offered resettlement opportunities in their own countries. And as you can see, the graph is rather kind of a messy, but I think it provides a great deal of information about the country of origin, a country of asylum, and then later on, the country of resettlement. And I, for one, am proud to say that the United States has always been the leader in providing resettlement opportunities to those who are most vulnerable. So that is through the U.S. Refugee Admission Program, right? So again, in 1980, the Congress passed the bill, refugee bill, and then we have set up the infrastructure that includes overseas processing and then arrival into the country. And also there's an infrastructure to help support those who are newly arrived. And I'll explain it to you a little bit more on this later. So in the next slide, though, I wanted to explain to you about, we're talking about refugees, we're talking about asylees, and how do we even define? So again, refugees are processed overseas, they are outside of the home country, are not able to go back home, and they have to present the evidence of the persecution claim. And actually the Department of Homeland Security and the USCIS Refugee Corps has to have in-person interview to go through all of the persecution story and make sure that they are valid, they are verifiable of the fear, and then they can be granted refugee overseas, and then they are transported into the United States. You might heard about SIV visa holders, special immigrant visa holders are those who are from Afghanistan mainly right now, but in the past also Iraqis who had worked with the U.S. missions overseas, and then who face oppressions from the current government because of their tie to the U.S. military or U.S. embassy there. And asylee is the who's already inside the country and who claims that they are not able to return home because of the fear, and that they will have to go through a process, through the court, through the judges, and then ask for asylum status. And what other populations that we are seeing? So victims of trafficking, it can be both for sexual trafficking or labor trafficking. And Cuban Haitian parolees, meaning if you remember the era of Clinton, where he came up with the dry food, wet food program. So whoever is from Cuba, whoever set foots in the United States are eligible for assistance and also are provided with the permanent pathway here in the United States. And that still continues. And certain American is, we no longer see this population, but I am still including just for a fun fact, have you ever heard the word American? And who do you think that includes? Yep, you can guess, American, right? So obviously it's American and Asian. After the Vietnam War, there were some individuals who had both um, American and Asian's blood um, from Vietnam, and then so they are provided with resettlement assistance as well. And lately, we have Afghan humanitarian parolees. I am sure you have all seen horrible pictures and videos coming out of the Kabul International Airport, right? People are running up to the plane. They had to leave everything, make a decision right away whether to live or to flee. Um, so we have well over 2,000 Afghan humanitarian parolees resettled within Maryland during the period of 4 months in 2021. And also, you have seen the pictures, especially still seeing that, the horror of the war, right? I mean, I cannot imagine myself living in a small village or towns where you're hearing the bombardment and missile almost every night. Um, I cannot imagine myself in that position. So the United States stepped up, created a parole programs from Ukrainian through Uniting for Ukraine's. And then the US citizen can step up and say, okay, I wanted to help with Ukrainians who are fleeing the country. So there's a matching program, and then they are admitted, and also they're eligible for federal and state benefits. So that Afghan and Ukraine situation actually created a lot of visibility and a lot of awareness among our community members. And I'm happy to report that many step up, contacted our office and see what can we do to help, right? So that's really a welcoming that is much, much needed for those who are fleeing, right? So before I move on, I just wanted to ask you, imagine this, even when you're in the office, somebody in authority come to you and, ask you, give me your wallet and give me your phone, and you must go back home right now. What would happen to you? What would happen, right? You don't have your wallet, you don't have your phone, you don't have any other resources. Do you think you can go home on your own? I think the refugees are in similar, but obviously much harder situation where they have to make a certain decision in a split second to live or to flee, right? If we are not able to just leave our wallet and phone, um, and then we're not capable of doing anything currently, so, right? So I think the resettlement opportunities um, are life-saving and life-changing opportunities for those very few who are lucky to be considered for the third country resettlement. So I don't know how I do with the timing, Fiona. Is it okay? Okay, great. If I'm talking too fast, please let me know too. Right. Okay. So yeah, we're going to continue and talk about the U.S. Refugee Admission Program. Not yes. So again, as I said, U.S. is the leader in offering resettlement opportunities. And until 2016, I could very proudly say that the US admitted refugees on a yearly basis more than every other countries combined in the world, right? So that means we had provided more than 50% of refugees to be resettled in our country. And there are about, at the time, I think 18 countries that offer resettlement opportunities, but US share is more than anybody combined. So how do we do that? Again, refugees are overseas, so United States government, especially the Department of State, received the referral from the UNHCR or from the embassy or from a few nonprofit organizations who has authority to do so. So essentially there are three priorities, but when I say priorities, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are prioritized. They're just the name. So P1 is for refugees individually identified and referred to the US Refugee Admission Program. So there could be a very prominent activist. There could be, somebody who's famous fighting against their own government in fear for arrest or sentencing. And priority 2 or P2 is a group of people identified by UNHCR as well as the State Department, its particular interests, national interests for the United States government. So I don't know if you have seen about 6-7 years ago, the wave of Bhutanese coming into our state, and then Iraqis, and then Syrians, but that Syrian resettlement somewhat stopped. And then, so there are a group of nationalities identified by the US and in partnership with the UNHCR and bring them as a group. And priority 3 is simply a family reunification program. So typically, refugees who are already admitted in the country can file for a petition for spouse, unmarried children under 21, or parents of the person. So currently there are 3 priorities that consider refugee applications. And before I move on, there is a P4 is currently under work at the State Department. P4 is designed for the American citizens to get involved in supporting resettlement to those who are deemed admissible. So basically, you can call it the local co-sponsorship program. And that program can work with the State Department and provide assistance. And that program actually has been quite successful in Canada, at least for the last 10 years. So Canada doesn't actually have an infrastructure like we do, but they rely on the community members. They train those groups and they provide resources. So those groups or individuals are matched with refugees for the ongoing assistance. Right. So let's just move on to another slide, is refugee processing overseas. And the reason I am able to talk about this is that before I came to the United States, I worked in Thailand out of the US Embassy and I worked in refugee camps processing refugees through the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. So I'm not going to go through every single steps. I'm sure Joanna will be able to share this slide deck with all of you. But essentially what I can tell you is that there's so many different steps involved. The most important being security vetting, medical screening, and in-person adjudication interviews, and culture orientations. These are important steps, at least to prepare refugees to be somewhat ready once they are here in the United States. The security vetting is very robust, and according to rumors, there are 27 different agencies involved in National Security Council, under National Security Council. And out of those, 23 are actively involved in vetting refugees before they are able to come into the United States. So it's sometimes time consuming, lengthy, and it's very, very robust. And here on this graph, it says, you know, on average, it takes 18 to 3 years from the beginning until somebody lands on the soil of the United States. And that's 36 months. It's the ideal time frame. You know, sometimes it can take up to 5 years, 6 years, not uncommon, especially among those high-risk populations, because of the security vetting takes a long time for them to verify. So you can be sure that those who are admitted through U.S. refugee admission programs are thoroughly vetted and screened in terms of medical and also some other processes. So that is the overseas processing that is managed by the Department of State through refugee support centers. So there are, I think, about 7 different main refugee support centers across the country, across the world, and 2 in-country processing centers. So in-country processing center is the process citizens of the country. It's another fun fact. There are 2 in country processing centers. That's one in Moscow, in Russia, and another one in Cuba. So another fun fact on that. The next slide is asylee processing. So again, you know, I'm not going to go through everything, but essentially asylees are already in the country, probably on visa, and then before the visa expires, they come forward and say, I cannot go home because of the fear that I have. And they go through the, again, you know, in application and interviewing process and granted asylum status. Another way of doing this is crossing the border, obviously, and then, you know, overstaying the visas. And then when they got apprehended, they said, oh, I am not in the position to return back to my home country. So again, the asylum process on average takes 4 years and 3 months, you know, from the beginning to end. So it's none of them are easy way to get into the United States legally. So yeah, so that's the process, and now we're gonna focus more within our own state. So the next slide would be the first graph is the nationwide arrival, and the way refugees are admitted and the numbers decided is by the president every October or so in consultation with the Congress. He proposed or he proposed, we call it the ceiling or presidential determination. So he comes up with certain set of number, and based on that number throughout the year, refugees are admitted to the United States. So in this graph, the blue lines is the presidential determination, and orange lines are the actual number of refugees admitted during those years. And as you can see, 2019, 2020, we admitted the lowest refugee in the history. And then 2021 and 2022, refugee admission is somewhat slowed down because of the Afghan situation, because we were busy working with Afghan who were evacuated and placed in safe havens within the military installations. So how about 2022 within our own state and compared to the nationwide? So you can see refugees, SIV, Afghan humanitarian parolees, and Ukrainians. And so please note that our beneficiary includes victims of trafficking, again, asylees, and humanitarian immigrants. That includes Cuban, Haitians, and victims of trafficking again. So our pool of eligible populations is a lot larger than just refugee resettlement. So traditionally, we resettle about 2.8 to 3.4% of the nationwide number. So, again, if you compare the size and the populations of Maryland with our portion of refugee admission, we are top 7 in the country in terms of per population or per size. So we are doing great, so to speak. And then the graph of the map also shows where we have set up our resettlement infrastructure. So essentially, it's the Suburban Washington area that includes Prince George's, Montgomery counties, Baltimore metro area, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and a few other counties. And we recently set up a new resettlement sites in Baltimore, Frederick area, and the top 5 nationalities. So I'll pause here and I will ask the question. So let's just say in the typical year, how many nationalities do you think we receive in a typical year? From how many countries? Just put it in the chat. So, yeah, great answers. Yes, last year we have more than 50 different nationalities, more than 50, yes, nationalities that we resettle here in Maryland. So great, 50 different nationalities, but I think with 65 different languages, right? So for example, Afghan, the 2 main dialects are Pashto and Dari. So even though there are 50 nationalities, but 65 different languages are spoken. Okay, refugees arrive, they flee war, they flee violence. What happened once they arrive in the United States is the next slide will provide you about how the refugee resettlement funding and before that, yes. And who plays what roles, right? So again, I mentioned that the State Department process refugees overseas through the refugee support centers. And I think it's only natural that they continue to provide assistance initially on arrival, right? So the Bureau of Populations, Refugees and Migrations under State Department holds corporate agreement with 9 national resettlement agencies to provide, they call it reception and placement program. So that program essentially provides, essential and basic needs on arrival, right? Such as housing, transportation, food, and more importantly, I would say this is the protection phase. So the refugees need to have the ID. They need to apply for the social security numbers. And the children have to be enrolled in school and such. So that program lasts 30 days, but can be extended up to 90 days. And also here in Maryland, there are 3 resettlement agencies, as you can see on the screen, in 6 different locations. So we have 2 resettlement agencies in Silver Spring area, 1 in Greenbelt, 1 obviously in Frederick, and Cadensville, and Baltimore City. Another important program is called Matching Grant Program. That's essentially an employment program. The program lasts for 8 months, and the requirement of this program is to take a decent job that is offered. So there could be entry-level positions, there could be, for somebody to start somewhere. And the preferred communities grant is for those with significant medical conditions, right? We have seen many pregnant, late-term pregnancy ladies among Afghan populations last year. We had some serious medical conditions. We had some amputees because of the war in Afghan and such. So that grant provides specialized support in terms of medical assistance, follow-up, and such. So the second funding stream, so to speak, is through us. And the funding comes from the Office of Refugee Resettlement at ACF. And then here in Maryland, MORA sits within Family Investment Administration of Maryland Department of Human Service. And that we provide temporary cash assistance, support services, set-aside programming, and other specialized assistance. I will tell you that the transitional cash assistance that we provide is limited to the first 12 months from the date of arrival. But the other programs, employment, youth, school, services for older refugees are open up to 5 years. Why 5 years? Because at 5 years point, refugees, asylees can apply for and become U.S. citizen. So once they become a U.S. citizen, they can access mainstream programs if needed. Right. So, and there are some eligible populations. So for the RMP program, only refugees, asylees, and then, but for us, our beneficiary pool is a lot larger. So yeah, there's a hand raised. So I welcome the, if you unmute yourself and please ask your question.
Michelle, are you able to unmute? You have a hand raised, or was that an accident? Maybe it was an accident.
Sorry, it was an accident.
No worries.
Okay, so yeah, so out of all this program, and the reason Joanna and I am presenting today to you is the importance of employment program. because the very core of the U.S. Refugee Admission Program is for refugees to become economically self-sufficient through income from employment and not being dependent on the public assistance and other welfare programs. So for us, we work very closely with we call employable adults. So anybody who is between the ages of 18 and 64 without any significant medical conditions are deemed employable, and everybody must engage with the employment activities to become employed as soon as possible. So what I say to the refugees that I meet on a daily basis, not on a daily basis, but from time to time, is that after being resettled in America, the happiest day for me was when I knew that my food stamp stopped. Right? Meaning, I made it somehow. I didn't need to depend on anybody else. And that's 3.5 months after I arrived. So I was very proud, of my achievement. My food stamp stopped, and I threw away my EBT card, and I'm on my way. Excuse me. So yeah, we have find ways to motivate, and then the partnership between our resettlement partners and you and your organizations are vital to ensure that not only the diversity of the employment opportunities, but also some of the industries that are in need of skills. So when I talk about our populations, basically about 20% comes with the university degree, graduate or higher degrees from foreign countries, and about 25 to 28% at least finish the secondary education, and the remaining did not have any formal education, probably just because they were housed at the refugee camps or something like that, right? So, but what I'm trying to say is that a lot of people come with their talent, and in terms of both academic and lived experiences, and many people also come with credentials, but unfortunately produce overseas, so they need to go extra steps to get it evaluated and have equivalency measurement to the US standard. And especially the current largest population of Afghans, as I had mentioned before, they worked with US missions. They worked with the US military as culture advisor, as drivers in so many different roles. So their English is a lot better than me. And then, they can engage in those workforce activities right away. So yeah, that's the importance of us developing such partnership. And if we go to the next slide, but of course, employment is not the only program that we provide funding for. We wanted to make sure that all aspects of the age groups challenges are met. So we have different programmings for health. We wanted to make sure that not only the refugees' health, but also the receiving public also safe. So we require everybody to go through the health screening appointments. within the first 90 days, where they also get immunizations and other health assessment. And here in Maryland, we are proud to report that every refugee 14 years and over will have to go through some kind of mental health assessment. So there's a tool to do that, and our partner at Maryland Department of Health actually follow up with individuals who score irregularly, on those score sheets. So again, employment services, we have three main pots, so to speak, is refugee support services, and again, the early employment is the goal. Vocational training and employment services. So we partner with Montgomery College and Baltimore City Community Colleges to identify, some of the vocational training that offer industry recognized certifications to our populations. And last, the Refugee TANF coordination program. So in the past, we didn't have any touch point with the TANF beneficiary because they get the assistance through the local DSS and their own vendors. But we participated in the competitive grants with ORR. So then now we can have appropriate support to help with TANF customers who are refugees. Education, ELSA classes, and also one very new initiative. And just yesterday, I visited our partner that has a mobile classroom for children between the ages of 0 to 5. So it's coming in your neighborhood. Please look out for it. It's a huge white bus where they refurbish it and turn it into a mini classroom or playgroup centers. So the goal is that to provide those playgroup activities to the children. At the same time, their parents are in ELSA classes. So it's a kind of a two-gen approach. And then targeted management, extended case management. Again, somebody who are not enrolled in any mainstream programs can come in and ask for, oh, I lost my SNAP. How can I reapply for it? A one-touch kind of a services. And then services for older refugees. Youth programming, school impact grant, youth mentoring program. So there are three part of services. So one is for academic achievement, not only for the secondary education, but post-secondary education. And those who decided that post-secondary education is not their main goal, then we have an academic career path youth mentoring program. And the last one is for those who feel isolated just because of the language or the culture or social. We have social inclusion program that teach or match, refugee kids with those children who are born here. Targeted outreach, asylee outreach project, and for the Afghan humanitarian populations, we have immigration and legal support assistance because, again, they were admitted under parole authority. They don't have the immigration status yet. So we need to help them apply for and receive asylee status. Wow, I talk really quick. And how do we deliver those services? In the next slide, at MORA, there are 4 of us. We cannot do everything direct service provision on a daily basis. The way we do it is that we formed a partnership with different organizations, community colleges, and nonprofit organizations that they deliver those services and then we hold a contractual relationship with them and renew the programs on a yearly basis after going through a robust risk assessment, the performance, the measures, and all of those things. We're about to reach to the end. So, Joanna, if you could click on the, no, before, yeah, there's a fact sheet. So we'll show you, yep. So this is our fact sheet for the fiscal year 22. It's pretty thing to look at, but hopefully it also gives you some vital information and understand the at least the ecosystem of resettlement programs here in the United States. And please make sure to visit our website, Maryland Office for Refugees and Asylees. We do have updated information on the newer populations, or what are the background of those nationalities that are coming. So then the public is informed, and also have a clarity on who is eligible for what and at where. Well, so I'll stop here, and now it's a time for Q&A, and then to answer the questions or concerns that you may have. Please feel free.
Thank you, Miat. Very much appreciate that. Lots of fabulous information. If we can give a round of applause to Miat, virtual round of applause. Here they come. Yay. Thank you so much. I did want to kind of go through the chat and take the chat questions first, and then we can kind of go to hand raises, if you will. So we did have a question from Monica Grove. She states, I'm an intake specialist for my adult education program in Charles County, and I'm seeing more students coming from Haiti under Biden's new parole program. Are there any plans for a resettlement agency to be placed in or near Southern Maryland?
So that's a really good question. And thank you, Monica, for your assistance to the new not new, but emerging population. So through the Biden administration, they introduced parole programs essentially for 4 nationalities: Venezuelan, Nicaraguans, Haitians, and Cubans. So Venezuelan and Nicaraguan are currently not eligible for any of the federal or state benefits, but like as I said, Cubans and Haitians are. And we are closely monitoring, and I'm not sure about the counties in the south of Maryland, but I talked to a number of people in Eastern Shore, Wacomico County, and currently a professor from the Salisbury University volunteered to do the need assessment. Hopefully that will get ready by the end of July. So then we will analyze it, and then based on that, we're going to work with existing partners. So what I'm trying to say is that we might not set up a new, infrastructure, but we're going to provide support to existing nonprofit organizations, so they might have layered of funding to build capacity to provide assistance to Haitians. I have talked to at least 3 Haitian churches, 2 community-based organizations in the Eastern Shore. But if you're seeing more Haitians coming to your county, please let me know if there is any, current nonprofit or community-based nonprofit organization that are assisting them. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Miat. Let's see. Question from Kevin regarding the skills and labor proficiencies. Does your program have partnerships with guilds, unions for skilled labor?
That's something new, I must admit. I don't think I have heard about the guild. Um, so, but what I can tell you is that Joanna and I co-chair the Maryland Skilled Immigrant Task Force with a number of nonprofit immigrant serving organizations in the state. And we meet monthly to share information, to exchange resources and such. But if you think that organization should be part of our conversation, uh, you know, please reach out to us or Joanna on that. And thank you for that resource.
All right, awesome. And then just to preface, we'll have like a resource email that I'll send out afterwards with kind of taking notes as we're talking about certain things, just so we can kind of make sure we share the resources afterwards as too. All right, next question I see from Liliana. She says, are asylum seekers eligible to apply for FAFSA?
For financial assistance for post-secondary education, Joanna?
Yeah, the financial application for federal student aid, I think is the official title for it.
Mm-hmm. I am not an expert on it, but if it's a refugee kid and connected with resettlement agency, please ask them to reach out to the school program case managers, because again, I know that they are having a summer academy in about a couple of weeks, and part of the activities is, to provide orientation on FAFSA and the college application process. And I also know that they take the field trip to at least University of Maryland and American University for college visits. So please let the kid know that those resources are available at the resettlement agencies.
Thank you. Another question from Liliana. How can an agency become a MORA partner?
So we don't have RFP process within our work structure. And again, local resettlement agencies, obviously there are 3 that I listed in the previous chart. They have the cooperative agreement through the State Department to bring in refugees, right? So I think it's a natural setting. They receive refugees, we provide assistance, so then there is a continuation of support throughout the resettlement period. And then we work with the ELSA providers, and we have nonprofit organizations that, had some very innovative, creative idea. Again, like I said, mobile classroom for children. So if you have any innovative ideas, please reach out to us. We will definitely, look at the proposal. And then, if nobody else is doing, and this is really effective, efficient in targeted area, then we will definitely entertain it for sure. And again, one thing that I would tell you is that we have many new emerging populations like Haitians, Cubans, Ukrainians. They live far away from our resettlement infrastructure, so to speak. So we're always looking for some innovative ways of, reaching out to them. And I proposed to my boss about the mobile case management support unit, to turn the van into case management unit. I don't know if it's going to happen, but if you have really innovative ways, for example, one of the things that I want to do is, you buy a curriculum that's industry recognized, and then you recruit, 20, 30 refugees, every 6 months or so. And that would be beneficial not only for refugees, but also the employment employers, right? So yeah, please reach out to us.
Awesome, thank you. I see another question from Jan. What kind of visa do refugees hold?
Great question. Refugees are admitted as refugees, and after a year, they can apply for a green card or adjustment of status. After 5 years, they can apply for citizenship. So they don't come with visa, and the reason being, so during the first year, refugees are not encouraged to travel outside the country, right? Because they claim that they flee their home because of the persecution, right? So if they are able to go home, what's the point of being admitted, right, as refugees? So during the first year, they have a refugee status. If they want to travel overseas, they are not allowed to go back to their home country. But if they want to travel overseas, they can apply for travel documents. But after a year, they are green card holder, so they can apply for a passport.
Thank you, thank you. There's a question about the slides. Yes, there will be a resource email and we'll have the slides in there. So thank you for that. Melissa asks, do you have any recommendations for credential assessment for refugees? We have a partner who can help, but it's a very lengthy process. Melissa, I'm just going to ask, what is the partner with whom you work with? Just to kind of help frame the question, possibly. If you're able to unmute or drop it in chat. Oh, there we go.
We have a couple of different partners that help, but it's always a lengthy process. So for more context in the question, often our clients, we're Montgomery County WIOA, often our clients come with credentials from their home country that need to be assessed properly so that they can work in the United States with their credentials properly assessed.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, the Maryland Skilled Immigrant Task Force was founded, when WES, World Education Services, and other entities started this Welcoming US and the Skill Initiative about 6-7 years ago. So with that, WES is still our greatest supporter, very active member within our task force. With the credentials, okay, somebody who finished college in Norway or Germany is a pretty easy process. But for me, it took me more than 2 years. And currently, I understand that nobody is accepting any credential translation and evaluations for those who come out of Afghanistan. And the reason being something like WES actually had to contact the original institution, get the record, and then get it translated and evaluated. So, obviously Burma being a third world country with not a good record keeping system, it took them a while. And so the lengthy process is, I think, that part, getting the original information and certificate from the institution. And again, I heard that they are not doing it for Afghans because essentially there is no system that is working to help support that. So
yeah, there is one program that WES is doing. I think it's the Gateway for All or something to that effect, but I'll have the resource as well in the follow-up email. But while it's not an official credential evaluation for certain countries like Afghanistan, Syria, I believe Venezuela as well, where it's just sometimes near impossible to get the original information, they will help individuals maybe to some effect kind of put together an unofficial credential evaluation that folks can have at least as some type of resource. But unfortunately, Melissa, to answer your question kind of directly as well, sometimes you can't bypass the lengthiness of it. And it's unfortunate. It's just the systems kind of that are in place at the moment. And so, yeah, it's sometimes just, yes, it is a lengthy process, and it can be a time-consuming and costly process as well. So, but I'll send along those resources so that you have them too, just to know that there is a specific program, at least through WEST, for certain countries for which it may be hard to get the actual original documentation, but they will help them to do at least, quote unquote, unofficial credential evaluation for those populations. So hopefully that is something that could be helpful. Any other questions? We can do a hand raise. That's all the questions I see in chat. If I happen to miss your question in chat, please let me know, but I don't think I did. Let me see this. So Mona writes, for all of those job seekers that have credentials, higher degrees from their home countries, do they need to take or pass TOEFL still necessary to apply for MD job? I would say it would be dependent on the actual employer, what their requirements are. Yeah, so if that's a stipulation, I know for some of our licensing boards, especially like the health boards, they do have that requirement that folks do have to pass an English proficiency exam. Can vary board to board based on what the actual required test is. As far as the Maryland state government, that's something that I would have to look into. I can ask our HR department if there's a specific test that folks who are internationally born need to pass.
If I may add,
Yeah.
Joanna, I didn't need to take any test when I was giving this position. So maybe, I don't know. I didn't have to go through any TOEFL test or anything because my job is at the MD government job as well, right? So I don't know.
I don't think it's a requirement, but I don't want to speak out of turn. So I will do my due diligence to research this if maybe it was something at one point in time. But again, I'm not going to say no without actually verifying that that's a no. But Miad is a testament to no, he did not have to, and he does work for state government. So that would possibly answer that question, but we will find actual information. One last question. I see one more question just popped in. Jan writes, will their credits transfer if they did not complete college? I would say, again, this is also based on the credential evaluation and what actually does transfer from one country to another. How does it equate to, and it can vary institution to institution, right? We also know that institutions also have their varying, ways of what does their course translate to or what does it equate to? So it's a possibility always that yes, but it's never a guarantee that even, after having a credential evaluation will all credits transfer, maybe not, maybe some, maybe none. It all depends on the institution for which they're looking to apply to and what that credential evaluation actually looks like. There's a lot of these questions, there's just like no across the board, especially when it comes to like evaluating credentials from abroad, and then also kind of where are folks trying to take these credentials and what those entities require or looking for, or what are their processes, because we live in a very decentralized nation, right? So our processes are not centralized, right? And so it also is based on the country, the state you're in, and even within the state, with the institution that you are going to, right? So all of those can vary. Any other questions? I didn't see anything else pop up, but I'm making some notes for resources.
So if you think of it, if you're an American citizen and go to university college here in America, you can take it for granted that everybody else will recognize it, right? I mean, you can go to Thailand to teach English, for example, with the degree that you have, they won't have any credentialing company or to the airport. So you here in America, people are really lucky. That's what I wanted to say. Yeah, if there are no questions, I just wanted to end with we are very proud of our humanitarian assistance. But I also wanted to note that this is not just humanitarian effort. This is an investment, because again, the refugees, asylees, and all the other eligible populations come with talents. It probably not on the paper, but they come with strength, talents, dedication, and more importantly, they come with gratitude because America offers the freedom that they never had. So there's the strength, and I say this refugee admission program is an investment because within 7 to 14 years, the refugees pay back all of the expenses that incurred, during the initial resettlement period, overseas travel, food stamp, cash assistance, TANF, different programs. That expenses are paid within 7 to 14 years through their taxes, right? So whatever second generation is the profit, the benefits to the country. So I just wanted to let you know that this is a great investment, and we should have a really welcoming efforts to ensure that the refugees have what they need initially, because very, very soon they become contributing members in our communities as well. So again, thank you so much for your time, and hopefully I have given you some insights as to refugees, the resettlement programs that we have, and then how great it is to welcome somebody, and then see them successful.
Well, thank you so much, Mia. I see those applause coming through. So thank you, everyone. Don't leave just yet. I have one more culminating just information sharing for you. Next week will be on June 20th is World Refugee Day, for those of us who are unaware. And so I just wanted to share just a few events that are happening in our DMV area. And so if you happen to be in this area or don't have any plans in the coming weekends, just know that there's a World Heritage Festival happening in Frederick. And I'll send these slides around so that way you can get the link for the actual information. And then next Saturday, June 24th, the following Saturday, June 24th, in DC, at the National Cathedral, I believe it is. There's going to be a One Journey Festival, which is a national celebration of refugee talents and stories. And so these are some upcoming events for anyone who's interested in kind of connecting more with the communities and folks from various backgrounds. These are some opportunities to do so. So again, thank you very much for joining today. We do hope that this was beneficial for you. One last culminating activity before you leave. Just what's one takeaway, what's one thing that you learned today that you did not know, before you came on this session. If you want to just drop that in chat before you leave. And we appreciate everyone for attending, and look out for the resource email that will hit your inbox, if not tomorrow, the day after. Thanks, everyone.